Probability of paternity, 0%. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. Let me back up and tell you how a simple text message about lunch money ended up destroying 2 marriages and creating 1 very expensive life lesson. It was a Thursday afternoon, and I was 40 feet up on structural steel, laying down a perfect bead on what would become the main support beam for Cleveland's newest office complex. 12 years of welding had taught me that precision matters. 1 sloppy joint, 1 moment of carelessness, and the whole structure comes down. I had no idea that same principle was about to apply to my personal life in the most brutal way possible. The October wind was cutting through my jacket, but the torch kept my hands warm as I guided the electrode along the seam. This was the kind of work that demanded everything: steady hands, clear vision, absolute focus. 1 wrong move and you'd compromise the entire building's integrity. Tommy Rodriguez, my spotter for 6 years, was calling out measurements from below while I worked the overhead joint that would anchor the northeast corner. My phone buzzed against my chest through my welding jacket. Safety protocol says you don't check messages when you're working hot metal, but we were between sections, waiting for the crane to position the next beam. I flipped up my hood and pulled out the phone, squinting in the afternoon sunlight. Text from Lisa, my fiancée of 8 months. 2 weeks until our wedding. Everything was locked in. Venue booked, catering confirmed, photographer paid, even the apartment viewing scheduled for Saturday morning. We'd finally found a place we could afford on my supervisor's salary and her administrative assistant income. A real starter home, where we could begin the life we'd been planning since last Christmas. The message preview showed, "Dave bought me the most amazing lunch today," he said. I smiled, expecting another story about her work husband's latest attempt to play office hero. Dave Morrison, regional sales manager at her corporate office, had become a running joke between us over the past few months. Always buying coffee for the assistants, always cracking jokes, always playing the generous boss who looked out for everyone. Lisa called him her work husband because he supposedly took care of all the little things, remembering birthdays, bringing treats, making sure everyone felt appreciated. I'd met him once at the company Christmas party, tall, soft-looking guy in an expensive suit, the kind who'd never done a day of physical labor in his life. Drove a BMW, lived in the suburbs, had that corporate charm that made people feel important. Harmless enough, I'd thought. Just some middle-aged manager trying to be everyone's favorite boss. I opened the full message, and that smile died faster than a bad weld in a stress test. "Dave bought me the most amazing lunch today, 120s at that fancy steakhouse downtown. He said I deserve better than cafeteria food, and that he wants to make sure I'm eating well for the baby. Honestly, he takes better care of me than my real husband sometimes. Maybe we should name the baby after him. It's more meaningful since he's been such an important part of my life these past few months." I read it once, my vision blurred slightly like I'd been staring at the arc too long without protection. I blinked hard and read it again. Then a third time. Each time the words got heavier, like they were made of lead and sinking straight through my chest into my stomach. Baby? What baby? Lisa wasn't pregnant. At least, she hadn't told me she was pregnant. We'd been trying for a while, sure, but nothing had happened. Or had it? When was the last time I tried to think back through the past few weeks, but my mind was going blank, overwhelmed by that one phrase that kept echoing, more meaningful. More meaningful than what? More meaningful than me? The guy who'd been working double shifts for 3 months to afford the ring she wanted? More meaningful than me? The guy who'd been saving every penny to give her the wedding she'd dreamed about since she was a little girl? My hands started shaking, and it wasn't from the vibration of the welding equipment. The phone felt like it weighed 50 pounds. I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs, and suddenly the safety harness felt too tight, like it was cutting off my air. "Randy!" Tommy's voice cut through the fog in my head. "You okay up there, man? You look like you've seen a ghost." I looked down at him, 40 feet below, and tried to form words. Nothing came out. I just stared at that text message, reading it over and over, each time finding new ways for it to hurt. $120 lunch. That was more than I spent on groceries in a week, more than I'd ever spent on a single meal in my life. And he was buying lunch for my pregnant fiancée, pregnant with a baby I didn't even know existed, because he wanted to make sure she was eating well. And naming it after him, Dave Morrison, her work husband, the guy who apparently knew about my baby before I did. Something cold was spreading through my chest, like ice water in my veins. Not anger yet. That would come later. This was something worse. This was the feeling you get when you realize the foundation you've been building your life on is made of sand instead of concrete. "Tommy," I called down, my voice sounding strange even to me. "I need to head out. Something came up." "Randy, you're scaring me, brother. What's going on?" I was already unclipping my safety line, moving like I was in a dream. "Family emergency. Cover for me with O'Brien." Tommy nodded, but his expression said he knew this wasn't any ordinary emergency. When a guy who's never missed a day in 12 years suddenly bolts from a job site, it's not because grandma needs help moving furniture. I climbed down faster than I should have, tools clanking, against my belt with each step. Didn't bother putting them away properly, didn't care about protocol or procedure or anything except getting somewhere quiet where I could think, where I could figure out what the hell was happening to my life. I walked straight to the parking lot without checking in with the supervisor, didn't care about protocol, didn't care about anything except getting answers before this feeling in my gut ate me alive from the inside out. My F-150 started up with its familiar diesel rumble, and I sat there for a minute, just breathing, trying to process what I'd just read. The logical part of my brain was trying to find innocent explanations. Maybe she was joking about the name thing. Maybe Dave was just being nice to a pregnant coworker. Maybe I was overreacting to what was essentially a thank you text with some poor word choices. But the part of my brain that had kept me alive for 12 years working dangerous jobs was screaming that something was fundamentally wrong. That text wasn't casual gratitude. It was intimate, familiar, the kind of thing you write when someone has become more important to you than they should be. I called Lisa, straight to voicemail. Her cheerful recorded voice, "Hi, you've reached Lisa. Leave me a message and I'll get back to you." I hung up without saying anything and called again. Same result. That's when the anger finally hit, flooding through me like molten steel. Not just anger at Lisa, but at myself for being so blind. How long had this been going on? How many expensive lunches had there been? How many times had she come home and told me about her wonderful work husband while I worked overtime to pay for our future? And the baby. If she was far enough along to be worrying about eating well, she'd known for weeks, maybe months. How long had she been carrying another man's child while planning our wedding? How long had she been lying to my face while I saved every penny for a future that was already destroyed? I made a decision that would change everything. I started making phone calls. First call, the venue. "This is Randy Cooper. I need to cancel the wedding scheduled for Saturday, October 28th. The coordinator sounded shocked. Started asking questions about deposits and cancellation fees and whether we wanted to postpone instead. I cut her off. "Permanent cancellation. I'll call back about the money." Second call, the apartment complex. "Randy Cooper canceling the viewing appointment for Saturday morning, Unit 4B. The leasing agent tried to convince me to reschedule, said the unit was perfect for young couples starting out. I hung up while she was still talking. Third call, Tommy's cell. "Hey, I need a favor. Can you call around to the guys? Tell them the wedding's off. Don't need any details spread around, just that it's not happening." "Randy, what the hell happened? You were fine 20 minutes ago. I'll explain later. Just trust me on this. And, Tommy, if O'Brien asks, tell him I had a family emergency. I'll be back tomorrow." "Brother, you're scaring me. Whatever's going on, tomorrow. I promise I'll explain tomorrow." Now came the hard part. I knew where Dave Morrison lived because Lisa had pointed out his neighborhood once during a drive back in August. We'd been coming back from dinner at her parents' place, taking the scenic route through the suburbs, when she'd mentioned that her boss lived in one of those nice developments near the golf course. She'd pointed out his street, said he had a beautiful house, company car, the whole suburban success package. At the time, I'd thought it was casual conversation. Now, I was wondering if it had been something else entirely. The drive took 28 minutes through rush hour traffic. 28 minutes of my imagination running wild with possibilities I didn't want to consider. 28 minutes of trying to figure out what I was going to say when I got there, what questions I was going to ask, what answers I was prepared to hear. The house was exactly what I'd expected. 2-story colonial with perfect landscaping and a circular driveway. A silver BMW sat in front of the garage, license plate reading DVM1. Cute. A Ford Explorer was parked beside it, probably his wife's car. Normal suburban family scene, except I was about to blow it all to hell. I sat in my truck for a minute, engine running, wondering if I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life. What if I was wrong? What if this was all some massive misunderstanding, and I was about to destroy an innocent man's marriage over a poorly worded text message? But then I remembered that phrase again. More meaningful. And I knew, with the same certainty I had when I was laying a perfect bead, that something was very wrong here. I walked up to the front door and knocked 3 times. Firm, confident knocks. The kind that said this wasn't a social call. A woman answered, blonde, early 30s, wearing yoga clothes and holding a coffee mug. She had kind eyes and a welcoming smile that made what I was about to do feel even worse. "Can I help you?" "Ma'am, I'm Randy Cooper. I'm engaged to Lisa Wallace from your husband's office. I need to show him something." Her smile faded slightly, confusion replacing warmth. "Oh, okay. Let me get Dave for you." She called for him, and I could hear movement from deeper in the house. Footsteps on hardwood floors, a man's voice asking who was at the door. When Dave Morrison appeared behind his wife, I watched his face carefully for any sign of recognition, any hint of guilt. He was exactly as I remembered. Tall, soft around the middle, wearing khakis and a polo shirt, like he was dressed for a country club lunch instead of a Thursday evening at home. The kind of guy who'd never had calluses on his hands or worried about making rent. "Dave Morrison?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Yeah, that's me. What can I do for you?" I pulled out my phone and held it so both of them could see the screen. "My fiancé sent me this today. Thought you should see it." Dave's face went through about 6 different colors as he read the text. His wife looked over his shoulder, and I watched her expression change from confused to horrified, to something I couldn't quite name. Maybe recognition, maybe fear. I don't understand," Dave stammered, but his voice had gone up half an octave. "What baby? Lisa's pregnant?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "According to this message, you've been taking real good care of her, buying expensive lunches, making sure she eats well for the baby, being more meaningful to her than her actual fiancé." His wife, I realized I didn't even know her name, stepped back from both of us. "Dave, what is he talking about? What baby?" "I don't know." Dave's voice cracked like a teenager's. "I mean, yes, I bought lunch for her and some of the other assistants last week. It was a team celebration. We closed the Morrison account, and I wanted to thank everyone who worked on it, but we never... He looked at his wife desperately. "Honey, I swear nothing happened." "Last week?" I pulled the phone back and read the message again. "This says you bought her lunch today, 120s at some fancy steakhouse, and it sounds like this isn't the first time." Dave's Adam's apple bobbed like a cork on rough water. "Today? Yes, okay, I did take her to lunch today, but it was just business. We were going over the quarterly reports." "Business," I repeated slowly. "You took my pregnant fiancé to a $120 business lunch to discuss quarterly reports." "Pregnant?" His wife's voice came out as barely a whisper. "Dave, is this woman pregnant?" She mentioned something about not feeling well lately. I thought maybe she had a stomach bug or something. I was just being nice, making sure she ate something good instead of that cafeteria garbage." I studied his face carefully. Either he was telling the truth and was genuinely confused, or he was the world's worst liar. But there was something in his eyes, a flicker of panic that went beyond just being confused. "Here's what's going to happen," I said, my voice coming out calmer than I felt. "I'm going home to have a conversation with Lisa. If I find out you've been more than just a generous boss, this conversation is going to continue in a very different way." Dave nodded rapidly. "Of course, absolutely. I'm sure this is just a misunderstanding. Lisa's a sweet girl, but sometimes she says things that come out wrong." Sweet girl. I almost laughed at that. Lisa was 28 years old, not some innocent kid who didn't know what she was saying. His wife was already pulling out her phone. "I need to call someone," she muttered, walking away from us. "Look," Dave said quietly, glancing toward where his wife had gone. "I can see how that message might seem inappropriate, but I swear to you, nothing has happened between Lisa and me. She's been emotional lately, and I've just been trying to be supportive. Maybe I've been too friendly, but that's all it was." "Too friendly," I repeated. "Is that what you call it when you spend more on one lunch than most people make in a day?" I have a good salary, he said defensively. I like to be generous with my team. Your team, right? I turned to go, then stopped. One more thing. How long has Lisa been emotional and not feeling well? Dave hesitated. Maybe 6, 7 weeks? It started sometime in September. September, 2 months ago. If Lisa was pregnant enough to be worrying about eating well, and if it had started in September? Thanks, I said. You've been very helpful. I walked back to my truck feeling like I was moving through quicksand. Everything was starting to make a terrible kind of sense. Lisa had been different lately, tired, moody, picking at her food. I'd thought it was wedding stress. Now I was wondering if it was something else entirely. The drive back to our apartment took forever, and no time at all. My phone was buzzing constantly. Lisa calling, Lisa texting, Lisa wondering where I was and why I wasn't answering. I ignored it all. I wanted to see her face when I asked my questions. I wanted to watch her reaction when she had to explain that message without warning. She was waiting by the window when I pulled up, already opening the door before I'd even gotten out of the truck. Her face was pale, anxious, like she'd been pacing for hours. "Randy, thank God," she said, rushing toward me. "I've been calling you for 2 hours. Where were you? Why didn't you answer your phone?" I walked past her without saying a word and sat down on our secondhand couch. The same couch where we'd planned our future, where we'd talked about kids and houses and growing old together. It felt like a lifetime ago. "Sit down, Lisa. We need to talk." "About what?" She remained standing, but I could see her mind working, trying to figure out why I was acting strange. "About your text message, about Dave Morrison, about the baby you forgot to mention to your fiancé." The color drained from her face so fast, I thought she might faint. She sat down hard on the coffee table across from me, her mouth opening and closing, like she was trying to form words that wouldn't come. "Randy, I can explain." "Good," I said quietly, "because I've had a very interesting afternoon. Start with the baby. When were you planning to tell me I'm going to be a father?" Lisa looked like she'd been caught in a lie by her father when she was 10 years old, guilty, panicked, searching for any way out that didn't involve telling the truth. "I found out 3 weeks ago," she said quietly. "I've been trying to figure out the right way to tell you." 3 weeks. I felt that cold feeling spreading through my chest again. "You've known for 3 weeks that you're pregnant, and the first person you tell is Dave Morrison?" "That's not... I didn't tell him first. I mentioned that I wasn't feeling well, and he guessed. He has kids, Randy. He recognized the signs." "He recognized the signs," I repeated slowly. "And your first instinct was to let him take you out for expensive lunches to make sure you were eating well for a baby that's supposedly mine. It wasn't like that? Then what was it like, Lisa? Explain to me how your work husband knows about my baby before I do. Explain to me why you think naming our kid after him would be more meaningful than naming it after its actual father." She started crying then, the kind of desperate tears that come when you know you're caught and there's no good explanation for what you've done. "I was scared," she sobbed. "I didn't know how to tell you. We've been trying for so long, and when it finally happened, I was terrified you'd think I was trying to trap you into marriage." "Trying to trap me?" I stared at her. "Lisa, we're already engaged. We're getting married in 2 weeks. How would having a baby be trapping me?" "I don't know. I wasn't thinking clearly. I've been so emotional and confused, and Dave's been really supportive." "Supportive how?" The question hung in the air between us like smoke from a bad weld. I could see her trying to decide how much truth she could get away with, how much she could hide without getting caught in another lie. Just listening when I needed to talk, being understanding when I was having mood swings, making sure I was taking care of myself, and taking you to fancy restaurants because he cares so much about your nutrition. "Randy, you're making this sound like something it's not." My phone buzzed, text from an unknown number. I opened it and felt the last piece of my world crumble. "Your girl's been texting me all afternoon begging me not to tell you anything. But there's nothing to tell because nothing happened. Keep your woman under control." I showed her the screen. "Dave says you've been texting him all afternoon, begging him not to tell me something. What is it you don't want him to tell me, Lisa?" She grabbed for the phone, but I pulled it back. "That's not what I said. I just told him I was sorry you dragged him into our personal business." "Our personal business? Since when is Dave Morrison part of our personal business?" She couldn't answer that. The silence stretched between us, filled with everything she wasn't saying. Take a paternity test, I said quietly. What? DNA test, blood work, prove the baby's mine. If it is, we'll figure out how to move forward from here. If it's not, Randy, that's insane. Of course the baby's yours. Then prove it. I shouldn't have to prove anything to you. You're supposed to trust me. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the parking lot where I'd imagined teaching our kids to ride bikes someday. You're right, I am supposed to trust you, but you made that impossible when you sent that text. You made it impossible when you let another man know about my baby before I did. You made it impossible when you started talking about naming our kid after your work husband. One stupid text message and you're throwing away our entire relationship. I turned back to face her. One stupid text message, plus 3 weeks of lying to me about being pregnant, plus expensive lunch dates with married men, plus God knows what else you haven't told me. My phone rang. Lisa's number. I looked at her, confused, then realized she was calling me from her phone while sitting 3 feet away. What are you doing? I wanted to see if you'd answer for me, she said, tears streaming down her face. You've been ignoring my calls all afternoon. Because I needed to understand what was happening before I talked to you. Because I wanted facts instead of whatever story you were going to tell me. And what facts did you find? I found Dave Morrison sweating like a guilty man when I showed him your text. I found his wife looking like her world was falling apart. I found a timeline that doesn't add up and explanations that don't make sense. You went to his house? Her voice went up an octave. Randy, how could you do that? You've probably ruined his marriage. If his marriage gets ruined, it won't be because of what I did. It'll be because of what you did. She was sobbing harder now. Please don't do this. We can work through this. The baby is yours. I swear it is. We can be happy. Schedule the test, Lisa. Send me the appointment details. Until then, I don't want to hear from you. I headed for the door. Where are you going? Somewhere I can think clearly. Somewhere I can figure out how I'm going to rebuild my life if this baby isn't mine. And if it is yours, I stopped with my hand on the doorknob. Then we'll figure out how to rebuild our relationship after you've destroyed every bit of trust between us. I walked out, leaving her crying on our couch. My phone started ringing immediately. I turned it off and drove to my parents' house. I needed to talk to people who'd known me my whole life, people who could help me make sense of what was happening. The next 10 days were the longest of my life. Lisa scheduled the paternity test for the following Tuesday, but the results wouldn't come back for 7 to 10 business days. 10 days of wondering if I was about to become a father, or if I'd just discovered my fiancé was carrying another man's child. I threw myself into work, pulling double shifts and volunteering for overtime just to keep my hands busy and my mind occupied. Tommy and the guys knew something was seriously wrong, but nobody pushed for details. That's the thing about working with men who understand hard times. They know when to talk and when to just let a brother work through his problems. Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. Unknown number. Randy, this is Sarah Morrison, Dave's wife. We need to talk. I pulled into a parking lot. Okay. Her voice was tight, controlled, like she was barely holding herself together. After you left our house, I started paying attention to things I'd been ignoring. Dave's been acting strange for months, defensive, secretive. He changed the password on his phone last week. What are you saying? I'm saying I don't think this is the innocent misunderstanding he's claiming it is. I found receipts, Randy, not just from last week. He's been taking Lisa out for expensive lunches for 2 months. Always the same excuse. Team meetings, client celebrations, performance reviews. My stomach dropped. 2 months? Every week, sometimes twice a week, and there's more. I found texts on our phone bill, hundreds of messages between his number and hers, starting in early September. September, when Lisa started being emotional and not feeling well. Sarah, I'm sorry you're going through this. Don't be sorry, be angry, because if I'm right about what's been happening, they've been lying to both of us for months. Friday afternoon, Harbor Medical Center called with the results. The nurse was professional but direct. Mr. Cooper, I have your paternity test results. Based on the genetic markers analyzed, you are excluded as the biological father. Probability of paternity is 0%. I sat in my truck outside the medical center, staring at my phone. 0%, not the father. Excluded. For a moment, I felt nothing. Just emptiness where my future used to be. Then the relief hit. Not happiness, but the relief of finally knowing the truth instead of living in uncertainty. I called Lisa. She answered on the first ring. "Randy, did you get them?" "Yeah." Silence. Long, heavy silence. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. "I never meant for any of this to happen." "So it's true. You cheated." It wasn't supposed to be anything. Dave and I were working late on the Morrison account in September. We went out for drinks afterward to celebrate closing the deal. I had too much to drink and it just happened. September, just like Sarah had said. Once? No, her voice was barely audible. It happened a few more times after that. But Randy, it didn't mean anything. I love you. I want to marry you. We can figure this out. I almost laughed. Figure it out? Lisa, you're pregnant with another man's baby. A married man, your boss. What exactly is there to figure out? We can raise the baby together. Dave doesn't want anything to do with it. He's terrified his wife will find out. His wife already knows. She called me yesterday. The silence on the other end was deafening. Lisa, we're done. Completely done. I want my ring back, I want my name off the lease, and I want you out of the apartment by Sunday. Randy, please. And one more thing. I want every penny back that I spent on this wedding. Every deposit, every payment, every dollar. I don't have that kind of money. Then figure it out. Sell something. Borrow from your parents. Ask your work husband for a loan. I don't care how you do it, but you're paying me back. I hung up and immediately called Sarah Morrison. Sarah, it's Randy. The test came back. The baby's Dave's. Oh God, I could hear her crying. I was hoping I was wrong. I'm sorry, Sarah. You deserve better than this. So did you. What are you going to do now? Move on. What about you? I called a lawyer yesterday. Divorce papers will be ready Monday morning. Over the next month, word spread through both our circles. The guys at the plant were supportive. They'd seen enough workplace affairs to know the signs, and they respected the way I'd handled it. No drama, no violence, just facts and consequences. Dave Morrison's world collapsed piece by piece. Sarah took the house in the divorce, along with half his savings and his company car. The affair became office gossip, and his reputation as the friendly, trustworthy manager was destroyed. 3 months later, I heard he'd been transferred to a different branch in another state. Lisa moved back in with her parents, trying to figure out how to be a single mother. Her family was supportive, but embarrassed. She got her half of the wedding money back from her parents' savings and sent me a check for $8,100 with a note. I'm sorry for everything. You deserved better. She was right. I did deserve better. 6 months later, I started dating again. Nothing serious at first, just getting back out there and remembering what it felt like to trust someone new. A year after that, I met Sarah Chen at a safety conference, an engineer with her own company, her own house, and her own understanding of what integrity means. We've been married 2 years now. She makes good money, I make good money, and we both know what we have because we both know what it costs when you lose it. Sometimes people ask if I regret how I handled things with Lisa. The answer is always the same. I regret that it happened, but I don't regret how I handled it. Because structural integrity isn't just about steel beams and welding joints. It's about knowing when something is compromised beyond repair and having the courage to start over with stronger materials.